The January 6th committee is set to begin public hearings on June 9th, and this week it could ask some Republican lawmakers to appear before the panel. One of them could be House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, who denied that he wanted Trump to resign, even though released audio proves that he did. He also acknowledged the danger of his colleagues' rhetoric.
Tension is too high. The country is too crazy. I do not want to look back and think we caused something or we missed something and someone got hurt. I don't want to play politics with any of that.
Former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows could also face more pressure to testify after CNN obtained text messages between Meadows and Fox News host Sean Hannity discussing Donald Trump's strategy for overturning the election. In a court filing Friday, Meadows accused the committee of leaking his texts to vilify him. Boo-hoo. He and Fox did not respond to NBC's request for comment. Joining me now is New York University history professor Ruth Ben-Ghiat. She is also author of Strong Men, Mussolini to the Present. Professor Ben-Ghiat, thank you for coming back to the Sunday show. Based on these recordings, what do you think this means for the January 6th investigation and, more importantly, the state of our democracy?
Well, first, I want to point out that the fact we're having these hearings in June and the fact that we can read about these leaks and these text messages is a sign that we still have a functioning democracy. There's a reason that Trump went after the press from the very beginning, trying to turn it into fake news. And there's a reason that he went after Mueller when he was being investigated, because you won't be having any hearings in China and Russia and Turkey. So this is a sign that this is why the GOP and Trump are so against this. Mm-hmm. And indeed, it was, the drama of Kevin McCarthy and the leaked audio is a sign of what happens in authoritarian environments with leaders like Trump, where they corrupt people and they lead them to do things they never dreamed they would do.
You know, let's keep talking about that, because in private conversations, as we now know, McCarthy talks about Republicans' rhetoric admitting it's, quote, putting people in jeopardy. But he says something completely different in public. So what does that tell us about the Republican Party and their mindset, that they can say something in private and something completely different, the opposite, in public?
Well, it goes beyond the usual opportunism of politicians, because I see this with the lens of the history of authoritarianism. Excuse me. And McCarthy kind of embodies this dilemma that people who let themselves corrupted get into, because let's not forget that right before Trump got the Republican nomination in 2016, McCarthy told Paul Ryan, "I think Putin pays Trump." And the party hushed this up, gave Trump the nomination. And McCarthy evolved because anybody who has an independent streak, like McCarthy, has to be remodeled, has to be socialized. And that's what Trump did. And so he turned him into somebody who voted almost 98% of the time, according to Trump's wishes. And so what we're seeing now with McCarthy is caught between the last shreds of his conscience and then having to deny it in order to get Trump's approval. And he has Tucker Carlson on his back, because Tucker Carlson is the authoritarian enforcer. Anybody who deviates from the party line has to get, punished. And so McCarthy embodies the drama of what happens when you have a leader like Trump and a party becomes corrupted.
Let's talk about, so we've got the political wing of this issue, but we also have a media wing that is a part of this issue. And I'm referring to the text messages between Fox News host Sean Hannity and then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, where they're each talking to each other about getting advice and strategy about how to overturn the election. Can you please talk about what it means when people with authoritarian tendencies have a news organization at their disposal to help with their plans?
So what you want ideally is a complete coordination of messages. And that's easiest when you have a closed society. And the Nazis had a term for it, Gleichschaltung, which is coordination. Now we have an open society, making it all the more important for Fox to be extremely, aggressive about unifying the message. So they've been able to have this synergy between the party, between Trump and then, his chief of staff Meadows, and Fox, which has taken on the role of what would be a state media operation. And so these texts that came out, you see Hannity asking Meadows, chief of staff, after Trump's defeat, what should I be saying? What should I emphasize? And then Meadows tells him what to do. And he says, yes, sir, I'm on it. And that's why he said, once again, I'm not a journalist, I'm a talk show host. But Fox News is an adjunct of the party. And that's how I see it, coming from the point of view of authoritarianism.
Ruth Ben-Ghiat, I could talk to you for the rest of this hour if I could and if I had the time. So you know what that means. You will have to come back to the Sunday Show. Thank you, as always, Ruth Ben-Ghiat.